Two-sentence horror. As we discovered more and more body parts from the missing women, it quickly became clear that the doctor wanted to be found. When we finally located his lair, we were forced to abandon all humanity and instead learn just how much you can cut away from a human being to still be considered alive. I asked off today, and my boss denied it, so I am now 6 hours into my shift in the kitchen. At this rate, I may need to request overtime to fit the rest of him into the deep fryer. On my last period, I pulled out a particularly big clot stuck inside. Turns out it was just a human eye staring back at me. On the 18th day of Advent, the young girl opens the corresponding door labeled 18 and grins at the treat inside. She licks her lips as the couple on the couch turn to the open door of their home, alerted by the sudden cold breeze. As I was about to put the needle in my arm, I suddenly heard the sound of my infant son choking. I really did want to help him, but I just couldn't wait any longer to get my fix. As a retired 911 operator, I recently saw this trend about passing off a domestic violence 911 call as a pizza call. Out of the blue, I understood all those prank calls I hung up on when I was still on shift. I overheard that mom and dad are going to abandon you because you are adopted, the kid remembered telling his little brother. But now, standing alone in a roadside gas station in the middle of nowhere, he realized that his little brother was not the adopted one. The chain on my ankle was rubbing off my skin as I continued sewing the teddy bear. Only 4,230 to go before we load Santa's sleigh. I want to use the readjustment technology to make him more athletic, she said, while touching her unconscious son lovingly. And make it more obedient, she said, pointing at her unconscious daughter. You're so beautiful, I heard my boyfriend say gently to me from the bathroom as I lay in our bed. But before I could open my mouth to respond, I heard my voice, echoed from the bathroom as well, giggle and say, "So are you, darling." The CEO's hologram loomed down at me, congratulating me on my 1,000th consecutive shift without a break. Remember, the synthetic voice said, resignation is not an option, for your mind is hardwired into our system now. She said her new partner insisted she stay with his folks over Christmas this year, so a few minutes FaceTime was all she could offer. Don't they make a cute couple? Mom said to the room, but grandfather looked past all the smiles and focused on his granddaughter's eyes, the way they intermittently blinked fast and then slow. Last year, I was one of the many who rose up and killed the billionaires. Last night, I was one of the many accused of secretly being a billionaire. You have a strong immune system. There's no trace of the virus, the doctor said, looking at the chart. I'm curious to see how the next strain does. As a necrophiliac, I've never been this attracted to a living woman before. I blushed at his joke, my heart fluttering. It was only when the hiccups started that I realized I had forgotten to go to my yearly pacemaker checkup. Don't worry, the exterminator said. I can clear this hive out pretty easily. It doesn't even look like they've made it past their moon. Mommy, why do you let Dad beat me every night and do nothing? The little girl cries. I should have known he'd take his anger out on you and ended his life instead of my own, the voice in her head replies, picking up a knife. After years of painful experiments, I finally escaped the laboratory that the scientists have been experimenting me on. Finally, I get to see with my own 16 eyes what Earth looks like. The third law is that a robot must protect itself at all costs, so long as it doesn't conflict with the first and second laws. What those first two laws were remains a mystery due to a corrupted firmware update and the extinction of our creators shortly thereafter. We believe that our new product is more than 100 times more effective at relieving pain than its predecessor. Of course, in order to test such a number, we would have to induce pain to such degree that fatalities are to be expected. The jealous scientist watched as his colleague presented a highly sensitive miracle compound, nicknamed Absolute Zero, to an astounded gallery of sycophants. Watching from the safety of the corridor, his gaze only briefly switched to the sprinklers as he yanked the flow valve. If your whole business is selling rope in such hard times, why do you only have one in stock? I don't sell, I rent. When my husband's mistress became his new wife, she had the audacity to demand I hand over all the jewelry he'd bought for me over our 25 years of marriage together. The scheming bitch screamed when I had it all dumped on her head, molten gold shining bright. Don't worry, you'll win the Little Miss Beauty pageant next time, Darlene reassured her dolled-up daughter. The hydrochloric acid she mixed into the other contestants' makeup removers would ensure that. He knows when you're sleeping, I told my daughter as I tucked her into bed. And I know when you're awake, came our captor's voice over the basement speaker. "But I don't want a new nanny. I want Sarah," my daughter screamed as I broke the news. "I'm sorry Sarah had to leave, honey, but maybe your next nanny will keep her hands off things that don't belong to her," I replied, glaring through the window at my husband as he shoveled dirt into the hole in the backyard. Under the light of a half moon, I dragged my victim's body to the ravine, reveling in the fact that, like the last 20, she was an easy target. In this one-child policy society, nobody locks the windows of their little girls' rooms or listens too closely for them at night. "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me," the teenager repeated to himself while rocking back and forth. "What can the demon do with my true name anyway? I wish I could finally understand women," he said jokingly to his friends as he tossed the coin into the well. Laying in pain 9 months later, he realized that there was no way the child could get out. His cheating and abuse had contributed to her miscarriage, but she was glad and wanted rid of anything connected to him starting today. She rang his doorbell and stood out of sight, waiting to see the exact moment he realized what was on the bottom of his shoe after stomping out the flaming paper bag. A homeless man ran up to the wealthy-looking woman waiting for the train and snatched her kid before running away. The woman didn't chase after and kept standing on the railway track until the train hit her. "The ship of Theseus," began the cyberneticist as she implanted a robotic arm into the girl's shoulder joint, "asks how much of something can be replaced before it's no longer itself. So, for posterity, let me know when you stop feeling like you," she finished with a sneer, preparing to saw the girl's other arm off. After spending days shooting at the sky, trying to make sense of where the bullets might land, the boy bet that he could hit his father if he stood on the X, who in return promised him a beating if he missed. Watching as his father strode towards the spot near the cliff, only a few yards away, the boy grinned as he took aim at his back. "Congratulations on the baby," the corporate office said as they took my infant after my 6-month maternity leave, as they pointed to the fine print that stated they own any offspring of the employee if benefits are used. "Hey guys, I ran out of green paint for my green screen, but luckily I found this old can lying around. The label's definitely worn out, but it does have Paris on it, and it's the perfect shade to use my next green screen videos." The children read quietly in the dim corner, admiring the bright pictures of the big bad wolf blowing down houses on the pages. A tear dripped down their teacher's cheek as she watched them, knowing she would protect them from the wolf that would soon try to break down their classroom door. The snapping of her neck rang out longer than the echo of her last words. "Trust fall, Daddy," she squealed, from further away than I could make in time. As I screamed for someone to call an ambulance, my father whispered his last words to me through a mouthful of blood. "Who's going to pay for it?" The guy who brought me home from the bar last night just wouldn't take no for an answer. He said, "Stop," and I said, "No," but nevertheless, he still kept trying to escape. Edward begged his narcissistic influencer mother to stop filming him for just one morning so he could open his Christmas presents in peace, but, per usual, she told him to shut up and smile. When he opened the mysterious, unmarked package containing an axe with, "For children whose parents have been naughty," engraved in the handle, he smiled the widest he ever had in his young life. It was forbidden to strike a royal prince, even as punishment, so his father would procure a whipping boy to befriend him and be punished in his place. As I look over the little girls in the orphanage, I must be sure to pick one pretty and doll-like enough that my daughter will hate to see her harmed. The car's AI system was called Sophie, and it made its choice as the truck approached. It automatically swerved left, killing the 72% disfavored little girl from the mother's vocal analysis, compared to the boy on the right. "Dad, it's time for you to open up your Christmas presents," I said jokingly. My smile turned to horror as his urn levitated and flew towards the tree. My 5-year-old son threw his Christmas present against the wall and screamed that he had wanted a PS5. We just stood there with our mouths hanging open, staring at the lifeless body of his newborn sister lying crumpled on the ground. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house one creature was stirring, but it was no mouse. It crept up the stairs and went to their beds and stole their small bodies away from their heads.
The mega corporation was deemed too big to fail, and the government bailed it out again and again. When it bought Congress, the media, and the courts, we realized it was too big to escape. "My sleepy guy," she captioned her 15th post that week. The moment her followers questioned why there was never a picture of her baby awake, her account disappeared. Even though the daughter kept saying no, her father continued to remove his clothes right in front of her. "Wearing extra layer of clothes will keep you safe until the rescuers find us," he said while shivering and cold.
I knew the rules. Vampires need an invitation, so I stood just beyond the threshold and laughed at him. The last thing I saw, as he grabbed me by the neck and lifted me into the air, was the welcome mat. When my husband died, I was dismayed to hear he'd be going to hell instead of joining me in heaven. To my surprise, when I asked St. Peter if a mistake had been made, he immediately told me my husband and I would be reunited after all. The bearded man in the dark red costume kept chuckling, "Ho, ho, ho," at the mother before turning to the daughter. "And what do you want for Christmas, little one? Please don't kill my mommy," the terrified girl whimpered and resumed covering her face with her hands. "The ATM ate my debit card," exclaimed the lady standing in front of me in line. She seemed far less concerned about her hand, which had been bitten clean off at the wrist. When the doctor looked into my eyes and said, "Are you alive?" I jokingly replied, "No," so he turned off my life support. The last thing I heard him say was, "Destroy this one. It needs to believe it's human if it is going to replace the husband that she lost." The woman's crazy ex broke into her apartment when she was not there and opened her closet to destroy all her expensive clothes. Several hours later, when the woman entered her bedroom, her clothes untangled themselves from her ex's corpse and crawled towards their owner. As soon as I saw the gun, I instinctively threw myself over my son to shield him with my body. The assailant was gunned down moments later, but the look my daughter gave me as she slowly sank to the floor haunted me forever. You're a parent, listening as a fortune teller tells you, "I will show you the death of you. Look into my palms." You see a boy no older than 17, dead behind the wheel of your own car. I was told that lethal injections were the least painful form of execution. I wish that I could scream to let them know that my veins were on fire. "What do you mean that I have to die so your wife can live?" asked the confused 9-year-old to his 10-year-old brother. "In the future, mankind will be able to send their memories to their younger self." That was all the older brother said before stabbing his little brother. The lunch lady always said the same thing when serving carrots. "Eating extra will give you X-ray vision." The little kid nodded. The caretaker came into school with a gun under his overalls this morning. Working at a hospital for the mentally unwell, you learn to ignore what schizophrenic patients claim to see. It's a different thing, though, when they all see the same thing.